Hey there, everybody out in internet land. This is Half Man, Half Philosopher. Welcome to my channel once again. I just wanted to make sort of an off-the-cuff video about a couple of things that have been a little bit troubling, to say the least. Now, for about a year now, I've been living outside of America. I'm from America originally, all over the West, but for about a year, I've been living in Japan, and so. Being outside the bubble, your perspective on things maybe changes a bit. I don't know how much my political perspective has changed, but, being outside of the constant propaganda war, I never watch TV, I don't really watch American shit. Maybe it has given me a perspective of some interest to those of you who are still living within it or who want the perspective of an American. It's maybe a little bit different than that which is commonly put out there by most people of whom I'm aware. Now, the first one is with respect to gun control, and really the whole reason why I'm doing this, or I don't know, a lot of reason for my being, sort of just in general. So I made my first video about gun control, and I recommend you watch it. It's a little bit dry, and I apologize for that. I'm going to try and make this maybe slightly more entertaining. But essentially the argument is that gun control doesn't really... There's no evidence that gun control in any country historically has particularly affected the murder rate. In some cases, it seems to have actually exacerbated the problem. In some cases, perhaps it has some sort of help. But when I get into this debate with people, I'm really struck with how little value people, particularly on the left, have for freedom. How little value people place on, the liberties that they have. And I think this comes from sort of a lack of viewing the historical perspective of this. So when you're talking about gun control, it's inevitably going to come down to, what's the price that we're paying for the liberty of being able to own guns in a relatively free manner. And I think generally people on the left just don't see any value to people's freedom to own things that happen to scare them or in any other way bother them. In the same way that now in modern PC culture, people are starting to lose the value of freedom of speech because their feels might get hurt and, they're going to need to retreat to a room full of puppies and a ball pit or something in order to recover from the, microaggression slight of somebody saying they're fat or even just fucking disagreeing with them, whatever. And I think you really need to think about how many millions of people in Western history died to get us to this point. Through the Reformation, people being fucking burned alive because they were willing to do anything to have freedom. People who even came to America in the first place, who were, fighting for their own religious freedom, among other things, were willing to risk their lives. They were willing to do anything, to pay any price to have freedom. And they ensconced some of those liberties in the Bill of Rights, particularly those which would, in their eyes, have prevented what essentially has happened, which is having this tyrannical government which just does whatever it wants and tramples on your liberties. So people, millions of people died, trying to obtain these freedoms. And now you have, what happened to Americans? To quote the Joker, did your fucking balls drop off? It's full of cowards who are willing to throw away this most precious commodity of liberty at the tiniest discomfort. Or, I'm not saying that mass shootings are a tiny discomfort, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge number of people. And we're talking about freedom, which, don't you remember when they used to say, some pretty smart people who were smart enough, they weren't destroyed by the American education system, which didn't at the time exist to ruin people's minds. People who would trade liberty for security deserve neither. Don't you remember that shit? Freedom has come at such a price. The most minute diminution of it should be treated weighed on a scale as lead or something heavier than lead. I'm not really a scientist, but now it's we have a bunch of cowards who at the first inkling of trouble will just spray ink in your face and call you a racist if you say, hey, maybe we should value the fact that, we have these liberties, They came from, the most incredible, intellectual revolution in human history called, the Renaissance, and particularly the Enlightenment, that reshaped, the entire planet. During the Enlightenment, people's real optimism for individual liberty allowed them to, end slavery. I know whiteys are blamed for everything these days, but white British people in particular, ended slavery. Colonialism, for all its faults, brought a lot of trade and wealth and order to places that were previously just a bunch of fucking warring tribes. Like, for example, India, the East India Trading Company didn't want to take over India, they just wanted to make money. But they were so disordered and fractured, all the tribes in India, that really even the Indian people were like clamoring for them to do something about it. So they had these regional governments and stuff. A lot of these colonial people, for the mistakes they made, they were really actually trying to improve the situation of people around the world. And guess what? They fucking succeeded. Over the past 100 years, the lot of everybody on the planet has been improved by, the Enlightenment. We ended slavery. We ended disease for, in a huge way. We, ended poverty. We ended the requirement that children even have to work in America and other Western countries. And through that, the whole planet has been enriched. People are like, oh, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. No, everyone has gotten enormously richer in the past 100 years. Everyone. With the exception of some pockets of, the third world that have been largely ignored or, in some cases, exploited or untouched by the West. Whatever. I'm not going to focus on that. But, now that, there's the slightest hint of trouble, everybody's like, fuck it. Let's just have the government protect us. We gotta run to some fucking big daddy in the sky known as the abstract concept of this, authoritarian government that's gonna keep you safe. Would people be satisfied if they just gave you a feeding tube and a television and they were like, you're safe, you can't own guns, what's the government saying? Obama's probably up there, people, we shouldn't have weapons of war on our streets in America. We're saving them to give to all the terrorists in other countries so that they can later come use them against you. And that kind of brings me to the second thing I wanted to mention, which is this whole Syrian refugee crisis, about which I don't have super strong ideas or solution. I'm not claiming to. I might do a video specifically about it in the future, but why is it that people can't even contemplate talking about the idea that it might maybe be a little bit dangerous to import thousands of people from countries that we just destroyed, whose families were murdered by our jets while their children were watching? Let's put ourselves in the position of a Syrian refugee who comes here and he's like, I'm gonna write a letter home to my family back in the Middle East. And he's like, dear grandfather, oh wait, he's dead because the Americans murdered him. Well, dear sister, oh wait, when she was getting married, the Americans bombed the wedding and murdered her and a bunch of other people, so scratch her off the list. Who am I going to write to? Oh, there's my Iraqi cousin. Oh, but he can't read because, his genetics were completely mutilated and modified by our depleted uranium that destroyed the entire genetic legacy of their culture for, a billion years. This is kind of starting to annoy me, and, all these Americans around here don't really seem to care. I'm getting a little bit angry about that. And then, look what's on the TV. America and Turkey are butthurt because Syria is bombing ISIS, who, previously also murdered, the rest of my family in Syria, and who I could plainly see were armed by the Americans. It kind of seems like America created ISIS, which trying to destabilize the entire region and caused me to have to come here in the first place. And now they're getting annoyed because Russia is fighting them. Hmm. It kind of seems like my whole life, my country, my culture has pretty much been totally annihilated by Americans and other Western powers who completely surround me and seem not even ambivalent, just to sort of ignore the problem and not really care. I mean, now that there's a black president, they seem to have just totally forgotten that war is bad or that bombing people is bad at all. I'm getting really kind of irritated. Having your entire family murdered by people kind of makes you a little bit annoyed. So I don't know. What would you do if some aliens came and murdered your whole family, destroyed your whole country, maybe killed 5 million Americans or something, and then they were like, "Hey, you wanna come live next to me?" Yeah. But of course, we're supposed to believe that there's this incredibly strong vetting process. Like, the government can't even keep drugs out of a prison. The government can't keep reporters out of a terrorist apartment crime scene 2 days afterward. Like, do you think the FBI is investigating this? Like, is it really hard to put 2 and 2 together about what the government is doing? Like, and all of you people who jumped on the one white guy who had committed some mass shooting and said it's right-wing terrorism, you fucking idiots! Like, you are so bafflingly stupid. You're proving Alex Jones right. This is literally exactly what he said. Let me run through the game plan for you. The government says, let's create problem X that scares people into giving away their liberties. Okay, check. Success. Now, say that the people who oppose us are X. Let's just import them. Okay, success. Now all of your political opponents have been destroyed by the draconian laws that were created to fight the problem that the government created in the first place, which is this giant terrorist threat that we created when we destroyed Iraq, destabilizing the whole situation, creating a power vacuum that was then filled by extremist ISIS that the CIA armed and probably created and still most likely controls in order to further our crazy foreign policy goals in the Middle East and trying to take over Syria and get rid of Assad because, well, who fucking knows? I don't care. Like, and then you are just clamoring to call your political opponents terrorists. You idiots! Don't you understand that this is going to be used against you? It already is being used against you. And then when an actual terrorist comes and shoots people up, the media is like, listen, not all Muslims are like that. And I agree. Not all Muslims are like that. You don't have, and that's fine. But even if 1 in 10,000 of these people who we destroyed their entire lives, if even one of those people is a little bit pissed, how many people might die? Like, do you care about that? No, you want to even take away people's ability to defend themselves against that because they're racists. Like, the kind of bizarro world that we're living in is just unbelievable. Like, I just want to shake you. How can I wake you up to this insanity? Like, stop supporting war. Stop it. Just stop obviously playing into the government's plan to install increasingly and incrementally more authoritarian governments by characterizing its political opponents as terrorists. You idiots, just... I don't know. Now, like I said, I live in Japan, and, we've imported over here, like, a ton of culture, and it's practically little America around here in some ways. But there's one thing that America seems to have taken a really strong liking to, and that's Seppuku. Taking a fucking knife or sword, stabbing yourself, and then slowly turning the knife until all of your guts bleed out all over the floor. That's what America is doing right now. Why? Why are you doing this? I don't understand why America feels the need now in this white guilt, PC bullshit fucking universe to, take the sword of political correctness and race baiting, gouge out its stomach, and then watch its liberties bleed out over the pavement of the world geopolitical scene. Fucking stop it. Start having some optimism for individuals and individual liberty. Stop being so quick to follow the horde into this fucking vortex of doom. It's not hard to see. It's really not. Stop being sheep. Stop it. Stop being sheep to the slaughter. Stand up for your fucking rights. Stop going to your safe room and just stand up, put your man pants on, because I'm a sexist, and be productive. Make things. Be free. Be the change you want to see in the world. Don't run away from tiny microaggression offenses. There are more important things in the world, like us not murdering millions more people in the Middle East who will then retaliate against us in the very near future. Fucking stop the wars. Either go to war and finish it and stop importing, people to come and murder us from those countries, as though we're gonna firebomb Tokyo and then be like, go over to the fucking kamikaze wing and say, hey, you guys want to come hang out with us? Stop it. It's fucking stupid. Grow a pair. End war. Okay? Be peaceful. Stand up for your rights. Please. That's my admonishment for the day.